We're going to talk to Susan Platt, who is the former Chief of Staff to Joe Biden. Good afternoon to you, Susan. Good to see you this afternoon. This situation with the Rafah crossing, it's embarrassing, isn't it, for the US president, because he went back to the United States thinking that this temporary opening of it was a done deal. Some aid, at least, was going to get in, and still there is delay after delay.
Well, I think it's dangerous to assume anything at this point. We saw what happened the other day when Israel was accused of bombing the hospital, and it turns out that wasn't the case. So I don't think we can assume anything at this point until we checked our facts. I do want to talk a little bit about President Biden's speech last night. It was classic Biden. It's where he's at his best, that of a seasoned leader, a temperate leader. It was an important speech that to the world, not just to Americans. And it was really of the moment, trying to put together two conflicts and the importance to the world, I think was incredible. And I think it's unfortunately the situation right now in the U.S. Congress where we have petty infighting with Republicans and we can't seem to get anything moving to help these people any quicker.
Yeah, it wasn't quite Ronald Reagan's axis of evil, but it wasn't far off, was it?
I think it was pretty darn close. And I'll tell you, as an American whose nephew happens to be on the USS Enterprise heading to the Middle East right now, I hope we can figure out some way to stop. I know we're hearing about its imminent invasion is imminent of Gaza. I certainly hope that cooler heads will prevail to figure out a solution that's not as dangerous to innocent citizens.
And do you think that is the message that Joe Biden took to Benjamin Netanyahu? Because there are indications that in their private discussions, at least, the US gave a tacit approval for a ground offensive to take place.
Again, I'm not going to make any assumptions. Netanyahu is the head of Israel. We're not. We can provide some guidance, as the president talked about. We should lead with our heads, not our hearts. And I think that's probably the message. We've learned from experience in the past not to do that. And I believe that was a solid message to Prime Minister Netanyahu.
You know Joe Biden well, having been his former chief of staff. How do you think he has handled the diplomacy this week? I mean, he did fly straight into a war zone, effectively, didn't he? You know, very, very tricky for him on all fronts. And those people who say, oh, you know, he's too old now to be US president, maybe they're thinking again.
Yes, and that was the second time after going into Ukraine and now going into Israel. I can tell you this. I know that I'm a lot younger than he is. There's no way I could continue this at the pace he's been doing the last, let's say, 5 days. It's been incredible. He has been at the top of his game. And I think this is really points to the fact that what he believes in American leadership, American values, and seasoned response. And that's experience talking. And that's why I'm proud to be an American.
And how much of that is key? The fact that as vice president, and of course going back to being a senator as well, he's been in these regions, he knows the personalities and the people involved, and that can take you a long way.
I think it's important, and I think to remember, he doesn't have an ego in this. His ego is not involved. It's the interest of democracy in the United States. And peace across the world. And I think that's a really important thing. It's not like some of the other leaders where their ego leads them into difficulties. Joe Biden doesn't have that problem.
He does have quite a long and complicated relationship with Benjamin Netanyahu, though, doesn't he?
Well, I don't think that's what we ought to be just working out right now. I think we need to focus on the difficulties at hand and how do we solve them with the least amount of bloodshed, and then, as the president said, and develop a two-state situation in the region.
And last thought, Susan, has the US worked out the end game? And we were just about to see more pictures in Yemen, for instance, of protests there. We understand that the US fired or intercepted missiles being fired from Yemen. And clearly the hope or the design is to avoid this escalating across the region.
Well, clearly it's a very dangerous situation. And I think we all have to be careful with any assumptions that we make and just keep working as much as we can through all channels to avoid any conflict where there's loss of life, intentional or not.
Susan Platt, as ever, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on GB News and sharing your thoughts. Thank you.